you. I'm a solutions architect at Trifecta Technologies and a Salesforce MVP. Going over a bunch of features of Spring 18 that are of interest to developers. The way I'll do it is I'll go over a few features and APIs, and then go into more of a deep dive on some new features of the Lightning components. Really pretty cool, and we'll all be using pretty soon. And then so where you can go to get some more information. One of the first things about Spring 18 now is that Force.com, the Force.com platform, does not exist anymore. I don't know. It's now the Salesforce Lightning platform. So if you go into like the Visualforce developer guide and you're reading, you're seeing references to Lightning and Lightning platform, and you're thinking, am I in the Visualforce developer guide or the guide? But you still see Force.com, the global search and replace. But anyway, it's no longer Force.com.
One platform at one point in time?
There was something called Salesforce One Platform. Yeah, that's true. I was there. So in this release, a lot of stuff has come in for Service Cloud, where the Service Cloud console wasn't really for maybe use cases. The omni-channel supervisor is there. Prior to this release, console, not the Lightning console, components and sidebar components and header components and stuff like that. And if you were reviewing a case and you got into a subtab of the case, your context remained in the new Lightning console. You can now what are called pinned regions in the Lightning app builder. That the classic console JavaScript methods, toolkit JS, are now supported actually Lightning console. So if you have a Visualforce page that you need to bring over, you can bring it over, mostly work with most of the methods for navigation. I want to test it. And then the other thing was web tabs. So a lot of times where you're going out to some integration or something like that, and you have it set up as a web tab. There's still work to do if you want to convert everything over, but they're making it a lot easier, and use it as an opportunity to redefine your pages, way of doing things with feeds and activities. And there's also the Lightning console, which is supported in Lightning components release now. There is two interesting things that I thought. One was now support dynamic pages via merge fields. For the Lightning components that are rendered with JavaScript, sometimes the web crawlers have problems with JavaScript, though Google has said that they're better at it now. It doesn't really, well, specific pages from Salesforce, like record pages or something like that, you couldn't put in options in the meta tags with this. And that is interesting is in the last release, they added in debugging for Force.com sites. So Force.com sites, community pages, are available to the general public, and in Salesforce, there's still a user that's executing under a user context. It's the guest user. Salesforce and see this guest user. What they did they thought that they were helping everybody to narrow down debugging, because if accessing your site at once, it's all really the guest user. So if you set up a debug log for it, it could be hard to made it so that you had to put a cookie in. The ones that had the cookie on it would get the debugging problematic too, because how can you tell you have to set a cookie, right? But anymore, and it's back to going to the debug log site guest user and setting the guest debug to the site guest user.
Does
Yes.
that apply to both keys as well as Visualforce, or is it the other?
I haven't seen it with the Visualforce. You can do a lot of SEO stuff with the Visualforce pages. I guess the web crawlers are going to have a problem getting it. It's when it has the dynamic components are all JavaScript.
Sure.
Problem, and that sends it off to a third-party service that when the user agent is, it serves up this instead of has to be interpreted by JavaScript.
Here, but if you did a single page app in Visualforce.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it works for the community templates, Visualforce. So we want to probably test that out.
I know we had.
Yeah. So if you have like
down that path with single page apps inside of.
So if you have like an Angular app or something like that inside of there, you can test them out too. Search engine you're using, Google or whatever, they have ways that you can test out what it would look like. But I thought it's pretty cool. It's all behind the scenes. And more into some of the code. So the lists class has two new methods, contains and index of, that the kind of Java classes that are underlying or that these are based on have had for a while. A lot of template code. If you're doing something new, utility method or something like that, you don't need to do that anymore. There are a few interesting things about it. Their strings are case sensitive in this regard. Just be careful about that. Decimals, if you have a decimal, which you're something like that in code, that considers scale. So 1.0 is not the same as 1.00. Check to see if they're equal, so they are. And then if you have a custom type that you've defined, hash code as well, the best practice in general, so that it'll will be consistent with the retrieve out of maps.
Design pattern just contains change. Like, how would people have done this in the past?
So,
are you showing this? I'm sorry if I'm jumping.
The way that you would have, so the way you would have done contains before, there's to do it. One is you would just have iterate over a list. What you're looking for is one of the elements, so a for loop. And the other way that do it would be to pass it as the constructor of the set class, which takes and then that would take care of eliminating any duplicates. And then you can call the contains method on itself to see if the element is there. None of those are really efficient. No, you should no. Like if you're implementing equals, you want to make sure that you implement the hash code as well. Otherwise, you get unpredictable code. Okay. There's a time field, something that's been requested for a really long time. For laughter, but keep going. All right. Oh, it's public beta. It was previously private. It's time zone independent. So there's nothing about time zones that are stored in GMT. It's just really a number. 24-hour notation. Classic will display it based on your org's locale. 2:40 p.m. But if you have some other locale, it could display it displays it as a 24-hour, no matter what. Notation of HHMM. Thing you do is if you can use it in formulas to the time value and date value. Similar functions for time. To subtract, you use milliseconds. It rolls over. So if you add 25 hours, it's the same as adding 1 hour. So it's like modulus operator, basically. Used in lightning input components, but I assume that'll change. Okay. Okay. So more support for SObject collections in the REST API now. Path has been there before for some other operations. There's that you can do currently collections where you can pass like objects all in one like that, and you can actually refer new object that hasn't been created that's part of the payload, like a contact and an account, and refer back to the account and put them all in with just one call. These are just the endpoints that exist now for SObject collections, a post and a patch. You can add or update 200 records at once. You can get, I think it's like 2,000 records. And what you would get is if you have a lot of IDs and a lot of field names, you'll run into HTTP limits on get length. So use post to that same endpoint and get back. And then delete exists as well. You can do up to 200 at a time. It's a transaction. So if you're updating, or if you're doing a deletion of 10 records, roll back everything.
So
yes. Yep. Exactly. So it's just much more efficient. Interesting that has been interesting for a while are big objects. Oh, great way to interact with them in the UI yet. But right now, if you want to get at them, you have to use to get at them. Something similar to that goes along with big objects is asynchronous SOQL queries. I think you have to pay some money for those. What came new in Spring SOAP called delete by example. Objects, create a big object, you specify what the index fields are on the big object. Ideally, or the idea behind the big object is you can have millions and millions and millions of records. And they make sure they kind of restrict you to make sure you're using indexes. For example, I don't have an example of it here, but basically you just create a template of the SObject and it'll delete whatever matches it. And then delete immediate is in Apex. You could run into it in this example here. You can do all that, and that's fine. It's not asynchronous, but you could run into an issue if there are too many records, you could time out or something like that. So, and evaluate if you're using big objects whether or not you really actually need. Probably do.
So what I would add is you get big objects with your typical enterprise license. So you have the feature.
Yeah. You
can query like Peter shows, but you have to query and the fields that are in the index and only the fields that are in the index. If you want the asynchronous and query anything, that's what you have to pay more for. Heard of the field audit history? Field is an add-on where they'll give you 10 years to track all your fields. Behind the scenes, that's what they're using as a big object. kind of where it came about.
Okay, this is a pretty big one for ISVs, so I figured I'd put a whole slide to it. But basically, ISV development for a while, and anybody who has done some debugging in a client org will run into a situation where all they see is entering managed package in the debug, but all. There was actually a bug in Salesforce generating package log lines. Say about that.
Are we thank Chris for that, I take it?
Yes, this is the Lightning product manager, so I included his picture on the page. So from here on out, I think all we have is Lightning. It's not at all frightening. Okay, so obviously it's been something that came out, what, 2 or 3 years ago, and it wasn't quite ready when it came out. But now we're getting to the point where there are a lot of features that are in the Lightning experience that aren't in, and all the new stuff is coming in there. Customers definitely want to move on. It's difficult because, you know, they deal with budgets and how much is it going to cost to move over, like how can move and all that, right? Made some improvements to report. So they have 2 different reports. One is a general readiness report pages. You can run a second report that reports just on the visual force. And they've made some improvements to it to identify where the pages are being used, recommendations, and then they classify for each one. So that's the suggesting of the next steps. Back to the main report, when they analyze things like your JavaScript buttons, they actually put in an hour estimate for this is how long it'll take to do it, to retrain people on it, and you in the right direction. But you need to have the business knowledge, and you should definitely have the technical, right? So if you're moving something over, it's not necessarily just exactly how it did in the Lightning or in Visual Force or in Classic in Lightning experience. They separate experience in the Lightning experience. You can make a lot of improvements and do things a little bit differently as well. Keep that in mind. Yeah, I ran it and I looked at some stuff and it had hours next to some of the. It was off, and other ones it was. You need to take out with a grain of salt as well.
That's the same
right.
Peter, as the system will tell me how long you can have to deliver that feature.
Yep. But the other thing is, if you are switching over, there is the ability to use Lightning style sheets. It's a tag on the Apex page. It's Lightning styles, I think it's called, or Lightning style sheets or something like that. And it takes a Boolean, an expression, so you can determine whether or not, if you're in the Lightning experience or not, play it as in Lightning or not. 18 to detect the console theme. So I've used that and it works pretty well. Update that will get implemented in Winter 19, and it's a change to, so Aura enabled classes are what Lightning components use to communicate with back on the server. They handle the request from the client. Defaulted to without sharing beforehand, and now they're going to change to default with sharing, which is probably the better thing to do. What the difference between the two are your sharing rules in the org. So it doesn't have anything to do with field level security or object cred or anything like that. It's whether or not you have access to this record, this specific record or not. Sharing, if you didn't have access to it, you access to the record. That's how you get around it if you need to. With sharing, it respects the sharing rules, and you wouldn't have access to it. You have some code that doesn't have that in it, that is getting records that aren't shared. You don't have the without sharing explicitly go in and try to fix that up.
Whether you could your API version and have or
any in the release notes. Probably. I thought that too.
They said if you put onto a prior API version.
I would think so.
That's a pretty big deal. Yeah. It's going to affect a lot of components out there.
No, if the class is without sharing as well. Controller when you come in. So like also if your controller is with sharing class that didn't have anything, that class would be with sharing, like a helper class. Class that is without sharing, then that's without sharing. In enabled methods take on whatever the class has declared, whatever they're exactly. Should really, anyway, you should be declaring them with sharing. Without if you don't need it, I guess. But just defaulting generally to with sharing. So something to look into. Support for adding separate standard action overrides by experience is now here. I've been asking for this. Ideally, you can get to a point where everybody's, in the Lightning experience. So this is more a stopgap. Help people get on their way. Only Lightning record pages that are assigned as the org default are supported. Are also now supported, and they weren't before. So it kind of be able to get people over to Lightning more. Okay. Biggest things that out in the Spring 18 release are support for input-output field. Our last release, there are some more things around them that are working better now, and I'll get into this a little bit more with the code. The code deals with this. So this is one of the knocks on all Lightning component development before was there was nothing with stuff that Visualforce input fields did. Security, the label metadata, all that different stuff that you got for free that made developing with Visualforce super easy and super quick. The input and output fields. Oops. So one of our lookups there, they're not quite there. In the Spring 18 pre-release, and yeah, they didn't really work. It kind of worked to get some of the most recent records in certain situations, but they're not documented to be working in the Spring 18 release anyway. Something called Lightning Lookup, and it's not to be supported yet. Dependent pick lists, those work. Stuff works. Yeah. And I'll show you in yeah. Yep. Kind of the big one, right? It does. It takes care of all of that. This is exactly what my code demos. It's the most interesting part, right? Let's see here. demo time. So we're getting ready for the Super Bowl, right?
The URL format?
Yes. I will. I have that. The URL formats update that you can apply. Show you. I've applied it in the org that I'm in. Bring up. Okay. So first, I'm going to show the component, and I'll step into the code. It is just a case. A little bit. I added this. And then I created my own custom component, which we'll dive into. There are some fields on the account related to the SLA. What's happening is this component will render the expiration date and time frame. If to enter in something wrong, so there's validation on the SLA serial number length, and it takes care of not allowing you to do it. We'll see the error. Doesn't display greatly, but SLA serial number, data value too large, this max length 10. So
and you just did that with a standard validation all clicks.
I didn't
rule.
It take it.
Oh, okay. So just
Ideally, it wouldn't let you enter in more than 10, but it does. That'll be something, yeah. But that shows you the error. I'll get into the code behind this in 1 second. Values all pull from the account. These aren't part of the case. So now I'm in here. Must be extended. Presumably, I know that it's been extended. Jeez. Update. Oops. Yeah. Error. Oh. Doesn't work. Try this one more time. Disappeared. What happened?
feature or bug?
That's a feature.
That's what I was always saying. An undocumented
Feature, because so let me go in here. Feature, okay? That's new in spring 18 as well. You can see that here over here, this SLA with this red. You come into the configuration on it. A little bit bigger here. Oh, orangish thing. You can add visibility filters to components. Since I'm the system administrator, only display this component if the system administrator is viewing it. Oh, SLA renewal needed is equal to true. Only certain fields that you can add in, dates aren't one of them. Field that evaluated to a checkbox using the date. New for is that you can get to related fields. Lists the record or the user, so you can get stuff from the user context. You get stuff depending on where you're. You could detect like the device. Here you can go to account name, and I think it has the same rules. other formulas where you can only go up 5 levels here. So that I had, you could imagine maybe you would put the SLA thing on there, some specific support manager or something like that, and not for sales. So you don't have to create a new page layout if this is one little thing. Let me switch over to the code. All right. Everybody see that? Code for SLA component, version 1. So I'm going to step through and progressively show how this just does the available for record home, so I can add it to a home page. In this case, it was case, where you get the system supplies the case record ID or the record ID. That's not new. It's lightning icon to display that little. This is the interesting stuff. This lightning record edit form, input fields. There's record view form for lightning output fields. And it takes the record ID, name, and then there are different methods that you can put on here. If you have a record type, you can put the record type ID. Here I did on success, handle success. They don't do anything really all that interesting. Messages are displayed automatically. Tag, similar to Apex page messages, by the field name. So I have these 3 different field names that are input fields. By the button that's a submit button. To build that form. There's no Apex controller or anything like that at all. On the input fields, there wasn't a way to specify like label. So if I wanted to switch the label, figuring out a different way to do it. I don't know if there is one. It pulls the label directly from the field. The thing that you'll notice about this page, I have the record ID hard coded, except for this one for the one account, right? Hop over here. SLA v2. So this is where it starts to get pretty cool. Record data. Record data. This is the Lightning data services that you may have heard about. Getting of the record ID from the context, Lightning is supplying the record ID from has record ID. Case record, but there's really nothing. It's saying it wants the account field, and it's saying use that you return back into this object here, which I've declared up here. So they get put into here. The takes care of all of that for you. You don't have to do any of it. So now, if we move back down to the record edit form, the account ID instead, these two, the Lightning data service and record data, along with the record edit form, the hard coding out and made this much more dynamic. So it was on the case page, which is supplied the case record ID, me be able to get information from the account directly, way like this. To do that, I have to get the actual account ID. Can get through. The other thing that is interesting, when I come back to, if I come back to my code, This is an old page. Back to the account. The account here. I changed the SOA to make it show up on the page again. Contact page. Component. Other code at all. It's the same exact component. What was on the case page. If you look at this code, it's in here at all. All that has to happen, is the field name has to look up to the account ID. So you could put this on opportunity maybe or something like that.
But you couldn't put it in an account.
Sure. Yeah. You could make this more generic to take. In this case, it would just be. Could pass that in. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that. So. I do separate account here or an opportunity. How about if I wanted to add it to an opportunity page? I'd want to be able to edit the opportunity page here. Edit page. Go down here. SLA anymore. I can't. There. It was on the contact case, that red SLA. Another feature of what you can do in your design file, you can actually limit your component can be put on it to contact in case. It'll only show up builder on the left side if you're editing a contact page, case page. It won't show up anywhere else. It's kind of a neat thing where you can. So with the data services record edit form, I think you get a lot more powerful. We're getting really close to some aspects a little bit better for quickness. Anybody have?
You can put together a page before you put together a page of standard components fairly quickly. You can get there now with Lightning that we had before.
Yep.
Building components.
So I mean, it's a little bit more complex because now you're. So version they created where SLA component that then calls to the account form and passes in a record ID. Nope.
You didn't write any Apex?
No Apex code. I'm looking at Lightning, and I've been working with Lightning. I always compare it to Visualforce and think how much Visualforce are easier, and it's always been harder. Much more that you had to do to get data service. That there's work that you have to do if you're only using this force record data with the record edit form. So it's a lot similar to Visualforce. So I implemented this handle success. Another interesting thing, if you want to set a breakpoint code and just write the bugger, and then it'll break if you have the console open. Just fires a toast. If the record's saved and still doesn't meet the criteria. So I didn't get too complicated. It's not exactly production ready.
stations or things you find it with a toast?
Yes.
Put a link, like what?
Yep, you can do lots of stuff like that. You can put links in toasts. You can so up here, this e.force is an event that you're firing that is handled by the Lightning events like that are handled by the container. And there's documentation on it. And thing reminded me, I wanted to show you the new URL format. Here. See it. Bring this up. The new URL format. This is my instance, and then it does this R case, and then the record number. Object, like the object tab, there's an O here, and I have the record number. O, and then it has the view down here.
Yeah.
Yes. It used to be 1, and then they did stuff on the hash, I think. Now it doesn't do that at all.
I think it's going to be January in summer.
Yeah.
Supposed to help with unexpected redirects. Sometimes they'll take you back in and you end up in your place. It's supposed to help with that.
Or if it'll help with some more navigation, maybe that they'll be able to build in. Replacing JavaScript buttons was various route. Maybe they'll make some improvements to go back to the presentations.
You're going to keep force.com.
I don't know. I haven't heard it. I imagine it's going to be around for a while. Our force is still there. But yeah, I don't know. Lightningplatform.com. There you go. Does anybody have any more questions about the code at all? Slideshow. This is information for the discount codes. These are only good through February 2nd. Going needs to use them by February 2nd. Out already, it's too late. But hopefully they're not.
Pass is the March 28th, 29th event. The ultimate pass, there's a series of training and certifications that you can do. I think it starts the Saturday before.
Yep.
Will include a couple of exams that you can sit for. There's tracks, architect tracks. If you don't want to get certified, they do have developing and lightning topics too. So there's a couple of different options if anybody is interested in sending them out there for it.
Here, the Trailhead release prep is there. And then listing of all the known issues that are fixed. 18. And there's the full and ultimate. And this is something that I saw on Twitter this morning. Video game that somebody played that is very frustrating. It's the wall. Spring. I'm looking forward to summer.
How does this go on?
All right, that was it. So I think they figured out how to beat it then. Any questions? Kind of were asking them during, so.
Question.
Sure.
Have you